Admiral Susan Crawford looked at the holographic display showing the Narathi star system. 7 beautiful worlds, each one hosting colonies that had been built with hope and hard work. In 72 hours, the Kraven would arrive to take it all away. She had called an emergency meeting of Earth's High Command. Every senior military officer and political leader was connected to this call. The mood in the virtual conference room was tense. Everyone knew what they were discussing. For 300 years, Earth had followed one simple rule. Stay hidden, stay safe, watch but never interfere. Now they were considering breaking that rule for the first time. Vice Admiral Jack Morrison spoke first. His voice was firm and certain. Intervening would expose Earth to the entire galaxy. Every species would learn about humanity's existence, military strength, and technological capabilities. The Kraven would want revenge. The Zithran would see them as a threat or a potential ally. The Council would demand answers about why Earth had hidden for so long. 3 centuries of safety would end in a single moment. Jack pulled up statistics on the display. The Kraven Empire had 4,000 warships. The Zithran Collective matched that number. A dozen other powers had hundreds of ships each. Earth had 847 combat vessels. The math was simple. Humanity could not fight the whole galaxy. Revealing themselves now might be the same as choosing eventual extinction. General Linda Hayes listened to Jack's arguments and then presented her own view. Yes, Earth had fewer ships than the major powers, but those ships were built on 300 years of studying everyone else's mistakes. Human vessels used stealth technology that no other species could match. Their weapons were designed after analyzing thousands of recorded battles. Their tactics were built on knowing exactly how every enemy would respond. Linda activated another display showing ship specifications. Human vessels could appear and disappear from sensors at will. They could coordinate attacks without transmitting signals that enemies could intercept. They carried weapons that combined the best features of a dozen different alien designs. Every human captain had studied more battles than most alien admirals would see in their entire careers. The question was not whether Earth could fight. The question was whether they should. Dr. Helen Price joined the conference with her research. She had spent 2 decades documenting extinct civilizations. Her database contained detailed records of 2,847 species that had made contact with the galactic community. Of those, 2,361 were now gone. Extinct, enslaved, displaced, or absorbed into larger empires. Helen showed them the numbers in stark detail. 83% of new species were destroyed within 50 years of revealing themselves. Of those that asked the Council for help, only 4% received any real assistance. The Council talked endlessly but acted rarely. They maintained order by allowing the strong to dominate the weak, as long as it did not threaten the powerful members. The Narathi had done everything right. They had announced themselves peacefully. They had learned galactic languages and customs. They had offered friendship and trade. They had filed proper requests for protection. And they would die anyway because the Kraven wanted their worlds and no one strong enough was willing to stop it. Commander Lisa Morgan asked the question that cut through all the military analysis and statistical data. How many more species would they watch die before silence became the same as being responsible for those deaths? Earth had survived by hiding. But what was survival worth if it meant doing nothing while billions died? President Richard Cole had been listening quietly to all the arguments. Now he spoke, and his voice carried the weight of leading 30 billion humans. He understood the risks. Revealing Earth could lead to war. It could lead to humanity's destruction. But there was another kind of destruction that happened slowly, over centuries. The destruction of becoming a people who valued their own safety more than any principle of right and wrong. Earth had stayed quiet to survive, but survival without purpose was just another kind of slow death. If humanity revealed itself by saving the Narathi, they might face enemies. If they stayed hidden and did nothing, they would have to carry the weight of watching another genocide while having the power to stop it. Richard called for a vote. It was not unanimous. Many voted to maintain the policy of silence. But when the votes were counted, the decision was clear. Humanity would speak. They would act. They would save the Narathi and accept whatever consequences came from that choice. Captain Daniel Cooper received his orders 8 hours later. He was given command of a fleet that officially did not exist. 40 warships, each one a masterpiece of stealth and combat technology. Ships that had been built in hidden shipyards and crewed by people who trained for battles they never expected to fight. The fleet would need to cross 200 light-years in 60 hours to reach Narathi space before the Kraven arrived. The route would take them through claimed territory, belonging to 3 different species. They would pass near sensor stations and through active shipping lanes. They would have to make the entire journey without being detected. They had done this thousands of times before. Human ships moved through the galaxy constantly, always invisible, always watching. But this time would be different. When they arrived at Narathi space, they would reveal themselves. The whole galaxy would see them. Lieutenant Greg Harris worked with the navigation teams to plot the route. Every ship would travel independently using slightly different paths. They would avoid all known sensor coverage and arrive at Narathi space from different vectors. Then they would drop stealth at the same moment and appear as if they had materialized from nowhere. The crews began their final preparations. Engineers checked every system twice. Weapons crews loaded missiles and charged energy banks. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Everyone knew this mission would change everything. Some were excited. Some were afraid. All of them understood the importance of what they were about to do. Commander Lisa Morgan reviewed the intelligence reports on the Narathi system. 7 colonies on 7 worlds. The main colony had 2 billion people. The others ranged from 500 million to 1 billion each. They were farmers, artists, scientists, and families. They had built a peaceful civilization focused on learning and growth. Now they were preparing to die. The Narathi had broadcast their situation to anyone who would listen. They described their children. They shared their history. They asked if anyone in the vast galaxy cared enough to help. The broadcasts were desperate but dignified. They were not offering treasure or strategic advantage. They were simply asking for help because it was the right thing to do. No one had answered. The human fleet departed from staging areas across 40 systems. Each ship made its own jump into faster-than-light travel. They moved through the void between stars, invisible to the sensors of species that did not know humanity existed. The crews were quiet, focused on their tasks, thinking about what came next. Daniel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Independence. The ship was named after a principle, not a nation. The idea that people should be free to live their lives without being dominated by those stronger than them. For 300 years, humanity had abandoned that principle in the name of survival. Today, they would reclaim it. The fleet made dozens of smaller jumps, carefully timed to avoid detection. They passed within 10,000 kilometers of a Zithran sensor station and were not seen. They crossed through a busy shipping lane while 3 different cargo convoys passed by, none of them detecting the human ships moving silently through the same space. 60 hours after departing, the fleet arrived at Narathi space. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in positions surrounding the system, 40 warships in a defensive formation that gave them overlapping fields of fire and mutual support. They were still invisible, their stealth systems hiding them from every sensor the Narathi possessed. On the other side of the system, the Craven fleet appeared. 73 warships in a formation designed to intimidate and overwhelm. Battle leader Kravik the Destroyer commanded them. He had conquered 14 species in his career, and saw no reason the Narathi would be different. Daniel watched the Craven fleet begin its advance toward the Narathi homeworld. The Narathi Defense Force, 8 orbital platforms and 12 patrol ships moved to intercept. It was courage in the face of impossible odds. It would not be enough. Then Daniel gave the order that would end 3 centuries of silence. The human fleet deactivated their stealth systems. 40 ships appeared on every sensor in the system, materializing between the Craven fleet and the Narathi homeworld. Daniel opened a communication channel. He broadcast on all frequencies in flawless Craven battle language, 4 words that would announce humanity's arrival to a galaxy that did not know they existed. 4 words that would change everything. Leave now or die. Captain Daniel Cooper stood at the large window of the Earth Defense Station, staring out at the stars. He had been doing this for 15 years now, watching and waiting. The station floated in orbit around Earth, hidden from every sensor in the galaxy. It was humanity's silent guardian, built to observe a universe that did not know they existed. The galaxy was noisy. Thousands of alien species sent messages across space every single day. Their signals filled the void with conversations, threats, trade deals, and desperate pleas for help. Some species were ancient and powerful. Others were young and weak. The Galactic Council, made up of the oldest races, claimed to keep peace among the stars. But Daniel had learned the truth over his years of watching. The Council talked endlessly while the strong crushed the weak. Earth had been listening to all of this for 300 years. In 2187, humanity picked up their first alien transmission. It was a simple greeting from a species called the Ventari. The message was full of hope and excitement about meeting other intelligent life. 6 months later, humanity intercepted another message. The Ventari were gone, destroyed by the Kraven Empire for refusing to surrender their worlds. That first tragedy taught humanity a lesson they never forgot. The galaxy was dangerous. Speaking up meant being noticed. Being noticed meant becoming a target. So Earth made a choice. They would listen but never answer. They would learn but never teach. They would watch but never act. Commander Lisa Morgan walked onto the observation deck carrying her data pad. She was Daniel's second in command and had served with him for 8 years. Her face showed the same tired expression he saw in the mirror every morning. It was the look of someone who spent too much time watching bad things happen. She handed him the data pad without saying anything. Daniel read the report and felt the familiar weight in his chest. Another species was in trouble. The Pelvari, a peaceful race of explorers, had discovered valuable minerals in their home system. The Kraven wanted those minerals. The Pelvari had 3 days to submit or face destruction. The report included their final broadcast to the Galactic Council. It was a plea for help, transmitted on every frequency they could reach. The message described their culture, their history, their children. It begged the Council to intervene. It promised anything in exchange for protection. Daniel already knew what would happen. The Council would debate. They would discuss protocols and procedures. They would talk about respecting the sovereignty of the Kraven Empire, and while they talked, the Pelvari would die. He filed the report in the archive system. File number 147-629. Another species crying out to an uncaring galaxy. Another reason why Earth stayed quiet. In another part of the station, Dr. Helen Price worked in the xenolinguistics department. Her job was to decode and translate alien communications. She had been doing this work for 20 years and spoke 47 alien languages fluently. Today she was processing the Pelvari distress calls, translating their words from desperate hope to archived data. Helen remembered every species she had documented. The Karathi, enslaved by the Zithran collective. The Delmic, scattered as refugees after their worlds were seized. The Valen, who fought back and were erased from existence as a lesson to others. She kept their stories, their languages, their final words. Someone needed to remember them. Lieutenant Greg Harris monitored the sensor stations that tracked every ship movement within 100 light-years of Earth. He knew where every major warship was located. He could predict patrol routes and fleet movements weeks in advance. Humanity had built an intelligence network that covered half the galaxy, all without anyone knowing they existed. Earth had not been idle during their 3 centuries of silence. Humanity had colonized 40 star systems, each one carefully chosen to avoid detection. No broadcasts, no large energy signatures. Every ship was equipped with stealth technology adapted from intercepted alien designs and improved by human engineers. Human vessels moved through space like ghosts, invisible to the sensors of every known species. The colonies were thriving. 30 billion humans now lived among the stars. They built cities, raised families, and worked toward a future their ancestors could barely imagine. But they did it all in silence, always aware that speaking up could mean extinction. Daniel returned to his quarters after his shift and pulled up the strategic database. It showed the current political situation in known space. The Kraven Empire controlled 300 systems and was always expanding. The Zithran Collective matched them in size and competed for resources and territory. Dozens of smaller powers existed in the spaces between, trying to survive by staying useful or staying invisible. Then there were the young species. New civilizations achieved faster than light travel every few years. They sent out excited greetings to the galaxy, eager to join the community of starfaring races. Most of them were gone within a decade. Some were conquered. Some were enslaved. Some were simply destroyed because they owned something a stronger species wanted. The Galactic Council watched it all happen. They made speeches about regrettable situations and unavoidable conflicts. They passed resolutions that no one enforced. They represented 47 species, but only the strong ones had real power. The weak ones sat in their chambers and pretended their voices mattered. Ambassador Peter Blake sent his weekly report from Council Station Unity. He had been stationed there for 12 years, living in a hidden facility that even the station's sensors could not detect. He attended every council session through concealed observation points. He listened to every debate, every vote, every backroom deal. His latest report confirmed what Daniel already suspected. The Council was weakening. The great powers were growing more aggressive. Resources were running low across the galaxy. Species that had coexisted for centuries were now competing for survival. The careful balance that had maintained relative peace was breaking down. And the weak were caught in the middle. Lieutenant Karen Phillips brought Daniel the latest intercept 3 days later. The Narathi, a species that achieved faster than light travel just 20 years ago, were being contacted by the Kraven Empire. The Narathi had 7 colonies and a home system with 4 billion people. They had introduced themselves to the galaxy 30 years ago with messages full of mathematics, music, and hope. The Kraven message was simple: submit within 1 week or face military action. Surrender all colonies and accept Kraven governance. Resistance would be met with overwhelming force. The Narathi sent desperate messages to the Council. They broadcast pleas in every language they had learned. They offered everything they had in exchange for protection. The Council scheduled a debate for 2 weeks from now. The Kraven fleet would arrive in 72 hours. Daniel stood at his window again that night watching the stars. Somewhere out there, 4 billion Narathi were looking at their own sky, wondering if anyone would help them, wondering if the galaxy had any justice in it at all. For 300 years, humanity had known the answer to that question. The galaxy had no justice. It had power and weakness. It had predators and prey. Justice was something you provided for yourself or went without. Earth had stayed silent because speaking meant danger. But silence came with its own cost. Daniel had filed 147,629 reports. He had watched 147,629 tragedies unfold. He had maintained humanity's safety by doing nothing while others suffered and died. Somewhere in his mind, a question was forming. A dangerous question that challenged 3 centuries of careful policy. He tried to push it away, but it kept returning. How many more would they watch die before silence became something worse than danger? The question would not leave him alone. And deep down, Daniel knew he was not the only one asking it. Director Velen stood in the Planetary Defense Center of the Narathi homeworld, watching their screens with growing despair. The Kraven fleet had arrived exactly when promised. 73 warships, each one powerful enough to destroy cities. The Narathi had 8 defense platforms and 12 patrol ships. The mathematics of survival were not in their favor. Then something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to change. 40 new contacts appeared on their sensors. The ships had not come from faster than light travel. They had not emerged from behind planets or moons. They simply appeared, as if they had been invisible and chose to reveal themselves. The new fleet positioned itself directly between the Narathi homeworld and the advancing Kraven force. Every ship showed weapon systems online and ready. Their formation was precise and professional, but their configuration matched nothing in any database the Narathi possessed. Then came the transmission on all frequencies. The voice spoke in perfect Kraven battle language. The words were simple and direct. Leave now or die. Battle leader Kravik stared at his sensor displays trying to understand what he was seeing. The ship showed unknown designs. Their energy signatures matched nothing in the Kraven military database. No identification marks or heraldry indicated which species they belonged to. Their weapons were active, but their technology was completely unfamiliar. Kravik opened a communication channel. His translator matrix began working automatically to convert his words into galactic common language. He demanded identification. He asked by what authority these unknown ships dared to interfere in Kraven expansion. His tone carried the arrogance of a warrior who had never faced defeat. The response came in clear galactic common, so that everyone monitoring the system could understand. The voice identified itself as Captain Daniel Cooper of the Earth Defense Fleet. He stated that he spoke for humanity. He declared that the Narathi were now under Earth's protection. Earth, humanity. Words that meant nothing to anyone listening. Kravik immediately searched his databases for any reference to these names. Nothing. He broadcast a priority request to the Kraven Central Military Archives. Still nothing. These species did not exist in any known record. Kravik responded with threats and procedure. These unknown humans had no standing with the Galactic Council. They had no territorial claims in this region. The Narathi lacked the strength to refuse Kraven terms. This situation was not their concern, and they should leave immediately. Daniel Cooper's reply was immediate and unwavering. Humanity was making this their concern. The Kraven had 1 hour to withdraw their fleet from Narathi space. If they remained after that time, Earth would remove them by force. The statement rippled across every communication channel in the sector. Species monitoring the situation from dozens of nearby systems stopped what they were doing to listen. An unknown force was challenging the Kraven Empire. The Kraven, whose military might had crushed civilizations for 1,000 years. The audacity was stunning. Battle leader Kravik did what generations of Kraven training had taught him to do. He ordered his fleet to attack. The Kraven warship surged forward in an overwhelming display of force. Weapons began charging. Launch bays opened to release fighter squadrons. It was a demonstration meant to make any sane enemy surrender immediately. The human fleet did not move. They held their position in perfect formation. They did not retreat. They did not show any signs of fear. They simply waited. Then, exactly 3 seconds before the Kraven entered optimal firing range, the humans attacked. Lieutenant Greg Harris coordinated the assault from his tactical station aboard the Independence. Humanity had spent 300 years watching how other species fought. They had studied thousands of battles. They knew every Kraven tactic, every standard procedure, every predictable response. The Kraven relied on heavy forward shields, concentrated firepower, and numerical superiority to overwhelm their enemies. So humanity attacked from the directions the Kraven never defended. Missiles appeared from seemingly empty space. They had been fired from human ships minutes before while still in stealth mode. Now they struck Kraven shield generators and weapon batteries with surgical precision. Each missile knew exactly where to hit for maximum effect. Kinetic impactors followed next. Dense metal rods accelerated to a fraction of light speed. The Kraven shields were designed to stop energy weapons and conventional missiles. They were not prepared for solid matter moving at relativistic velocities. The impactors punched through armor like it was paper. Then came the directed energy weapons. The beams used wavelengths that Kraven defensive systems had never encountered. Their shields did not know how to block them. Their armor could not deflect them. The beams carved through hulls, destroying critical systems with perfect accuracy. The human ships moved through the Kraven fleet like water flowing around stones. They did not hold formation like conventional warships. They did not trade broadsides in the traditional manner. They appeared, struck, and vanished back into stealth before Kraven targeting systems could track them. They attacked from above, below, and behind. They coordinated their strikes without transmitting signals the Kraven could intercept. Commander Lisa Morgan monitored the damage reports on her display. 17 Kraven capital ships were showing critical damage to main systems. 23 more had severe hull breaches and were falling out of formation. 31 had lost primary weapons or shields. The Kraven fighters that had been launched were flying blind, unable to find targets their sensors could track. Human casualties were 0. Not a single ship had taken damage. The battle was completely one-sided. The engagement lasted 11 minutes from first shot to last. When it ended, the Kraven fleet was crippled but not destroyed. Daniel had been very specific in his orders to the fleet. Show the Kraven that humanity could defeat them. Demonstrate overwhelming capability, but do not slaughter them. Leave them able to retreat and carry the message back to their empire. Daniel opened a communication channel to the Kraven flagship. He addressed battle leader Kravik directly. His tone was calm and professional. He explained that the Kraven were outmatched. He ordered them to withdraw their forces from Narathi space immediately. He warned that if they returned, humanity would not show the same restraint. For the first time in recorded Kraven history, a battle leader retreated from an enemy with fewer ships. Kravik gave the order to withdraw. His fleet, damaged and defeated, began the slow process of turning away from the Narathi homeworld. They would jump to faster-than-light travel as soon as their damaged systems could manage it. Director Velen broadcast from the Narathi homeworld before the Kraven had even finished their retreat. The Narathi voice carried disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. They did not understand what had just happened. They asked why Earth had saved them. They wanted to know what humanity wanted in return. Daniel considered his response carefully. He knew the entire galaxy was listening. Every species with sensors in range was recording this moment. His next words would define how the galaxy understood humanity. They would set the tone for every future interaction. He spoke simply and honestly. Earth wanted nothing from the Narathi. They had intervened because it was the right thing to do. Humanity had watched the strong prey on the weak for too long. They had maintained silence while injustice happened again and again. That silence had kept them safe. but it had also made them complicit in suffering they could have prevented. Daniel paused, choosing his final words with care. For 300 years, humanity had observed the laws of this galaxy. They had watched species rise and fall. They had seen the Galactic Council maintain order through endless debate and inaction. They had witnessed the strong take whatever they wanted, while the weak suffered with no one to protect them. Earth had watched all of this in silence, learning and preparing, but they were silent no more. The words echoed across communication channels throughout the sector. They were recorded and transmitted across faster-than-light networks. Within hours, every government and news organization in known space would hear them. The unknown species called humanity had revealed itself, and they had done so by defeating the Kraven Empire, while declaring principles that challenged the fundamental order of galactic civilization. On the Narathi homeworld, 4 billion people watched the human fleet maintain its protective position. They did not know what would happen next. They did not know if this salvation would last or if it would bring new problems. But for the first time since the Kraven ultimatum arrived, they had hope. In the Kraven fleet, battle leader Kravik recorded every detail of the engagement. His emperor would demand a full report. The military command would analyze every moment. They would want to know everything about this new enemy that had appeared from nowhere and defeated them so completely. Across the galaxy, leaders and military commanders were asking the same questions. Who were these humans? Where had they come from? How long had they been watching? What did they want? And most importantly, were they a threat or an opportunity? The answers would reshape the political landscape of known space. But in that moment aboard the Independence, Daniel simply felt tired. They had saved the Narathi. They had revealed humanity to the galaxy. The consequences would follow soon enough. For now, they had done what 300 years of careful hiding had prevented them from doing. They had spoken. And the galaxy had heard them. The galaxy exploded with activity within hours of the battle. News of the unknown species called humanity spread across faster-than-light communication networks. Every government, military organization, and news service wanted information. Footage of the battle was analyzed frame by frame. Experts offered theories. Politicians made statements. Military commanders studied the tactics. Humanity had revealed itself by humiliating the Kraven Empire in front of the entire galaxy. Ambassador Peter Blake walked into the Galactic Council chamber on Station Unity for the first time. For 12 years, he had observed council proceedings from hidden facilities built into the station structure. He had listened to thousands of debates and votes while remaining invisible. Now he stood openly before the assembled representatives of 47 species. The chamber fell silent as he entered. Every counselor stared at the human who had somehow lived on their station for over a decade without being detected. Peter felt their eyes on him but kept his expression neutral. He had prepared for this moment. He knew what they would ask and what they would demand. Counselor Thren of the Zithran Collective spoke first. His scales rippled with barely controlled anger. He accused humanity of violating first contact protocols by existing in galactic space without declaring themselves. He claimed they had interfered in the sovereign expansion of a council-recognized power. He stated they had attacked the Kraven without provocation and without authority. Peter listened to the accusations without interruption. When Thren finished, Peter responded calmly. Humanity had violated no protocols because they were not subject to them. They had never agreed to council authority. They had interfered because the council did nothing to stop an obvious injustice. They had attacked because the Kraven initiated hostilities by advancing on the Narathi homeworld with clear aggressive intent. Counselor Vresh of the Pelthian Union asked a different question. He wanted to know how long humanity had been watching. The human captain at Narathi Space had spoken perfect Kraven battle language. The human ships had demonstrated detailed knowledge of galactic space and military tactics. This implied long observation. Peter decided honesty was the only strategy that made sense. He told the council that humanity had detected their transmissions in the year 2187 by Earth's calendar. They had been observing the galactic community for 327 years. The chamber erupted. 3 centuries. An entire civilization had watched them, studied them, learned from them, and they had never known. Species that prided themselves on advanced sensor technology had completely missed an expanding human empire of 40 star systems and 30 billion people. Counselor Mir of the Tarvan Assembly representing one of the few genuinely peaceful species in the Council, asked the question with real curiosity instead of anger. Why had humanity hidden? Why not make contact and join the galactic community? Peter activated a holographic display he had prepared. Images filled the chamber. Species after species appeared on the screen. The Pelvari, extinct. The Karathi, enslaved. The Valen, scattered as refugees. The Delmic, completely erased from history. Each image showed a civilization that had made contact with the galaxy and suffered for it. He presented the statistics that Dr. Helen Price had compiled. In 300 years of observation, humanity had documented 2,847 species that joined the galactic community. Of those, 361 were now extinct, enslaved, or displaced. Peter explained that Earth had calculated their probability of survival if they revealed themselves. The numbers were not acceptable. Counselor Thren's scales darkened with rage. He accused humanity of judging the Council, of arrogance in hiding while others faced the challenges of galactic civilization. His voice carried the offense of someone who considered themselves morally superior, being told they had failed. Peter met his gaze directly. Yes, humanity judged the Council. The Council existed to maintain order, but they maintained it through inaction. They allowed the strong to dominate while they debated. They offered words and resolutions when species needed protection. They condemned the weak for being weak while doing nothing to help them survive. Fresh demanded to know what humanity expected the Council to do. Police every border? Fight every war? The galaxy was vast. Resources were limited. The Council could not protect everyone from everything. Peter's response was simple. Then protect someone. Earth did. Back on Earth, President Richard Cole addressed humanity in a broadcast that was immediately intercepted and translated by every species monitoring human space. He explained the decision to break 3 centuries of silence. He outlined the principles that would guide Earth's interactions with other species. He made it clear that humanity would not seek to dominate or control others. Then he made a declaration that sent shockwaves through every established power structure in the galaxy. Earth would extend protection to any species threatened with extinction or enslavement. Any civilization that called for help would receive an answer. Humanity would no longer watch injustice happen while having the power to stop it. The Kraven Empire responded within 24 hours. Emperor Kravik IX issued a formal declaration. He named humanity as enemies of the Kraven Empire. He ordered the mobilization of fleet elements across Kraven space. Battle leaders were recalled from garrison duties. War production facilities accelerated their output. The declaration was meant to intimidate the unknown species that had humiliated them. Instead, it caused a cascade of unexpected consequences across Kraven-controlled space. 23 species under Kraven occupation saw an opportunity they had been waiting years to seize. If the mighty Kraven could be defeated, perhaps they could win their freedom. Rebellions erupted on occupied worlds. Sabotage disrupted supply lines. Garrison forces that had maintained order through fear suddenly faced populations willing to fight. The Zithran Collective, watching their ancient rivals' humiliation, began quiet diplomatic outreach to Earth. They wanted to understand these humans, to assess whether they were potential allies against the Kraven or threats that needed to be contained. Their ambassador sent careful messages suggesting mutual interests and common goals. Minor species across the galaxy, those too small for Council attention, began broadcasting toward Earth's location. They asked for contact. They requested trade agreements. They sought alliances with the species that had proven willing to protect the weak. Messages flooded in from dozens of civilizations desperate for someone to care about their survival. Admiral Susan Crawford coordinated Earth's response from military headquarters on Mars. The fleet at Narathi space was just the visible edge of humanity's capabilities. Earth had 40 star systems with extensive industrial capacity. They had shipyards that could produce vessels at a steady rate. They had 3 centuries of preparation and planning. But they were still vastly outnumbered. The strategic assessment was sobering. If the Kraven fully mobilized, they could field approximately 4,000 warships. The Zithran could match that number. A dozen other powers had fleets in the hundreds. Earth had 847 combat-capable vessels and production capacity, for perhaps 50 more per year. The mathematics of a prolonged conflict were not favorable. Dr. Helen Price now served as Earth's chief xenologist. She led teams working around the clock to respond to the flood of incoming messages. Each transmission represented a species reaching out in hope or desperation. Some wanted protection. Some wanted trade. Some simply wanted to know they were not alone. Each message required careful evaluation and thoughtful response. General Linda Hayes presented military options for various scenarios. She had contingency plans for Craven retaliation, Zithran aggression, Council intervention, and combinations of all three. Every plan acknowledged the same fundamental problem. Earth could win individual battles through superior tactics and technology, but they could not fight the entire galaxy at once. Captain Daniel Cooper remained at Narathi Space, serving as both military commander and diplomatic representative. The Narathi had invited human delegations to their homeworld. They wanted to understand the species that had saved them. They sought to build lasting relationships and alliances. Director Velen met with Daniel in the Narathi capital city. The meeting was broadcast across Narathi Space so all citizens could watch. Velen asked the question that many species across the galaxy were wondering. Could Earth really protect the Narathi? What would happen when the Craven returned with 1,000 ships instead of 73? Daniel considered his answer carefully. He knew billions of Narathi were listening. He knew the answer would be analyzed by military intelligence services across known space. He decided only honesty would serve. He told Velen that he did not know if Earth could protect them against overwhelming force. But humanity would try. They would stand with the Narathi rather than abandon them. That commitment was more than anyone else had offered. It would have to be enough. The response resonated with the Narathi, and with dozens of other species listening to the transmission. Here was a powerful civilization admitting uncertainty but promising to act anyway. It was refreshingly honest compared to the empty assurances the Council typically provided. In the 6 months following humanity's first message to the galaxy, the political landscape shifted in ways no one had predicted. The Craven Empire, stretched thin by rebellions, had not yet launched their threatened assault on Earth. The Zithran Collective continued diplomatic outreach while positioning fleets near human space. The Council debated Earth status endlessly without reaching any conclusion, and humanity continued to speak, answering calls for help and building a network of protected species who saw Earth as their best hope for survival in an uncaring galaxy. 6 months after humanity spoke for the first time, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had changed. The old certainties about power and control were being questioned. Species that had accepted their fate as prey were beginning to hope. Predator empires that had operated without real opposition were discovering limits they had never encountered before. The Craven Empire had lost 17 colony worlds to rebellions. Their military forces were spread dangerously thin, trying to maintain control while preparing for potential war with Earth. Emperor Kravik IX had not yet ordered a direct assault on human space. His strategists were still analyzing the battle recordings, trying to understand how an unknown species with fewer ships had so completely defeated their forces. Battle leader Kravik, stripped of his rank and title after the Narathi defeat, was assigned to study human tactics. He watched the recordings hundreds of times. He analyzed every maneuver and weapon strike. Slowly, he reached a conclusion that disturbed him deeply. The humans fought as if they had been observing Craven battles for generations. They anticipated every move. They countered every standard tactic. They exploited weaknesses the Craven did not know they had, because they had been watching. For 300 years, humanity had observed and learned while remaining invisible. They knew the Craven better than the Craven knew themselves. The Galactic Council remained in crisis. Councillor Mir had proposed formal recognition of Earth and an offer of Council membership. The proposal was opposed by the Zithran Collective, the Craven Empire, and a dozen other established powers who saw humanity as a threat to the existing order. Species gained Council membership through established procedures. Earth had ignored all of them. Ambassador Peter Blake attended every Council session now. He spoke when permitted and observed when not. He made it clear that Earth did not need the Council's approval to act. Humanity would continue protecting vulnerable species regardless of what the Council decided. But cooperation would serve everyone's interests better than conflict. The vote on Earth's membership was postponed 3 times. The Council could not agree on how to handle a species that had existed in their space for centuries without their knowledge, and now challenged their authority by actually protecting the weak. In the meantime, Humanity expanded its network of relationships. The Narathi were joined by the Kolvar, who faced aggressive expansion from the Zithran collective. Then came the Senthi, threatened by raiders operating in lawless regions the Council ignored. 9 other minor civilizations reached agreements with Earth for mutual defense. Captain Daniel Cooper found himself commanding an alliance rather than just a fleet. The Narathi contributed ships to joint patrol operations. The Kolvar provided rare minerals needed for ship construction. The Senthi offered their advanced biotechnology in exchange for protection. Each species brought something valuable to the partnership. Together, they were stronger than any of them would be alone. That was the core of what humanity was building. Not an empire where Earth dominated weaker species. Not a federation where everyone pretended to be equal despite vast power differences. But a genuine alliance where each member contributed what they could and received protection in return. Commander Lisa Morgan organized training exercises that taught human tactics to allied crews. It felt strange to share knowledge that Earth had kept secret for 3 centuries, but it was necessary. Human ships could not be everywhere at once. Teaching allies to defend themselves effectively multiplied Earth's ability to protect vulnerable species. The Zithran collective made their move 4 months after first contact. Ambassador Zheliv arrived at Earth's primary diplomatic station with a carefully prepared proposal. The collective would formally recognize Earth's sphere of influence over the species they had allied with. In exchange, humanity would remain neutral in the ongoing Cold War between the Zithran and the Kraven. President Richard Cole considered the offer seriously before declining. Neutrality would mean abandoning species caught between the 2 great powers. It would mean returning to a policy of watching while others suffered. Earth had broken silence specifically to stop doing that, but Richard made a counter-proposal. Earth would remain independent and not align with either the Kraven or Zithran. However, humanity would actively support peaceful resolution of conflicts. They would not choose sides in ancient feuds between established powers, but they would oppose any aggression that threatened to destroy or enslave vulnerable civilizations. Ambassador Zhelev was not satisfied with the response. The collective had hoped to secure human neutrality and eliminate them as a potential ally for the Kraven. But neither did the Zithran choose to escalate toward conflict. They were patient and calculating. They would observe humanity further before making their final decision about whether Earth represented an opportunity or a threat. The real test of Earth's commitment came when the Kraven finally returned to Narathi space. Admiral Susan Crawford had anticipated this moment. Kravik IX could not allow the humiliation at Narathi to stand unchallenged. Kraven culture demanded a response. The only question was what form that response would take. When sensors detected a Kraven ship approaching Narathi space, everyone expected a fleet. Instead, a single diplomatic vessel arrived under truce protocols. Ambassador Grell came bearing a message from the Emperor himself. The proposal surprised every observer. The Kraven Empire would formally cede their claim to Narathi space and 3 other contested regions. In exchange, Earth would pledge non-interference in Kraven internal affairs. Specifically, humanity would not support the rebellions currently disrupting Kraven-controlled worlds. It was an astonishing reversal. The Kraven never negotiated. They never compromised. They never showed what other species would interpret as weakness. Daniel attended the negotiations as Earth's military representative. He understood what the proposal truly meant. The Kraven had analyzed human capabilities thoroughly. They had calculated the cost of war with a species that could strike invisibly and devastate fleets before battle was properly joined. They had decided that cost was too high, especially with rebellions already straining their resources. Peter rejected the initial proposal. Earth would not ignore the suffering of enslaved populations in exchange for peace. Humanity had not broken 3 centuries of silence just to become complicit in oppression again. But he offered a counter-proposal that acknowledged Kraven concerns while maintaining human principles. The Kraven Empire could avoid conflict with Earth by granting independence to any occupied species that requested it through legitimate referendum. Earth would provide neutral observers to ensure fair voting, but would not support violent rebellion during the transition process. Any species that voted to remain part of the Kraven Empire would be respected. The negotiations continued for weeks. Both sides made concessions. The final agreement granted independence to 12 occupied species over a 5-year transition period. The Kraven would retain control of 3 strategic systems, where referendum results showed majority support for remaining in the Empire. Earth would provide humanitarian assistance during transitions, but would not station permanent military forces in former Kraven territory. It was not perfect. It did not free everyone. Billions would remain under Kraven control, but it also saved billions more and established something unprecedented. The Kraven Empire had negotiated a peaceful resolution with a species they had planned to conquer. They had accepted limits on their expansion rather than face war with humanity. Counselor Mir brought the Kraven Earth Agreement before the Galactic Council as evidence. She argued that humanity's approach created stability rather than chaos. Earth's willingness to use force was backed by genuine commitment to peaceful resolution when possible. They had proven they could fight but preferred negotiation. The Council vote on Earth's membership was called for the 4th time. The political calculation had shifted. Humanity now had formal alliances with 14 species and a peace agreement with the Kraven Empire. They had demonstrated military capability and diplomatic skill. Excluding them from the Council no longer seemed like a viable strategy. The vote passed. Earth was granted full Council membership, with all associated rights and responsibilities. Ambassador Peter Blake took his seat in the chamber he had observed secretly for 12 years. Lieutenant Greg Harris, promoted to commander after 6 months of successful operations, oversaw continued expansion of Earth's intelligence network. Humanity would never return to complete silence, but maintaining their information advantage remained crucial. They would continue watching and listening, now openly acknowledged but still gathering knowledge that gave them strategic advantage. Dr. Helen Price continued her work documenting extinct civilizations, but now she also maintained records of species that survived because someone intervened. The Narathi, the Kolvar, the Senthi, 12 former Kraven colonies gaining independence, civilizations that existed because humanity chose to act rather than watch. General Linda Hayes prepared for conflicts she knew would eventually come. The galaxy was not suddenly peaceful. The Kraven were diminished but not eliminated. The Zithran remained powerful and calculating. Dozens of other threats existed in unexplored regions, but humanity had proven they could fight when necessary and negotiate when possible. Captain Daniel Cooper returned to Earth for the first time in 8 months. He stood at the same observation window in the defense station where this had all begun. The stars looked the same, but everything else had changed fundamentally. Commander Lisa Morgan joined him at the window. She asked the question that stayed in her mind. Did they make the right choice by breaking silence? Daniel considered the question seriously. 300 years of silence had kept humanity safe. 6 months of action had revealed them, created enemies, started conflicts that might escalate further. But it had also saved lives, built alliances, and changed the fundamental equation of power in the galaxy. He thought about Director Velen and 4 billion Narathi who were alive because Earth spoke. He thought about 12 species gaining freedom from occupation. He thought about minor civilizations across the galaxy, who now had hope that someone might help them survive. Daniel gave the only answer he could live with. They did what they had to do, not because it was safe or easy, but because silence in the face of injustice was itself a crime. Because having power meant having responsibility to use it for more than just survival. Earth's message to the galaxy remained clear and consistent. Humanity would watch and listen as they always had, but they would no longer stay silent when action was needed. They would protect those who could not protect themselves. They would oppose aggression regardless of which species committed it. They would build alliances based on mutual benefit rather than domination. For 300 years, humanity stayed silent while learning everything they could about the galaxy they lived in. They spoke once, announcing their existence with 4 simple words. Leave now or die. Now they spoke regularly, as often as necessary. Sometimes with offers of friendship and cooperation. Sometimes with warnings to those who preyed on the weak. Sometimes with force when words were not enough. The age of silence had ended. The age of action continued, and humanity had no intention of going quiet again.